Jake Harrison stood in the control room of Earth's biggest space station. He was looking at 12 strange alien faces on the big screen in front of him. These aliens controlled most of the known galaxy. They had been talking about humans for 3 months. Today they would give their answer. The alien that looked like a walking crystal spoke first. Its voice sounded like breaking glass. The species called humans are not welcome in our galaxy. You are too violent. You fight too much. You destroy too many things. We cannot let you join us. Lisa Brooks stepped forward. She was Earth's best diplomat and had worked for years to make friends with these aliens. But we have changed. We helped. The blue aliens from Altair. We made peace with 3 different species. We stopped fighting wars on Earth. Another alien that looked like purple gas in a suit interrupted her. Your past is too dark. You had world wars. You killed millions of your own kind. You destroyed your planet's environment. You cannot change who you are. Ryan Foster was standing near the back of the room. He was only 32 years old but already commanded Earth's fastest ships. He felt angry at what the aliens were saying. These aliens lived in perfect cities and never had to fight for anything. They did not understand humans at all. The crystal alien continued talking. We have decided that all humans must stay in your solar system. You cannot leave. You cannot visit other worlds. If you try to leave, we will stop you with force. Amy Peterson looked at the star maps on her computer screen. She was Earth's best military planner. She could see that the aliens had already put up invisible walls around the solar system. They had trapped humanity like animals in a cage. Dr. Paul Carter felt sick to his stomach. He had spent 15 years learning about alien species. He wanted to explore the galaxy and meet new forms of life. Now he would never get that chance. All his work had been for nothing. Jake turned off the screen. The room was very quiet. Everyone was thinking about what this meant. Earth had 7 billion people. Mars had 2 million people living in underground cities. Europa and Titan had smaller colonies. The asteroid belt had mining stations with thousands of workers. All of these people were now prisoners in their own solar system. What do we do now? Ryan asked. His voice was full of anger. Lisa looked out the window at the stars. She had always believed that humans could make friends with alien species. She thought that if humans showed they could be peaceful, the aliens would accept them. She had been wrong. We survive, she said quietly. We prove them wrong. Jake nodded. He had been a soldier before he became a commander. He knew that sometimes you had to fight even when the odds were against you. They think we are too violent and dangerous. Maybe they are right, but being dangerous is not always bad. Amy was already making plans. She could see that the alien barriers were very strong. Human technology was hundreds of years behind alien technology. But humans were good at solving problems. They were good at finding ways to survive. We need to make our colonies stronger, Amy said. Mars needs more farms and factories. The space stations need bigger life support systems. If we cannot trade with aliens, we must make everything ourselves. Dr. Carter looked sad, but he was also thinking. We know more about the aliens than they think we do. I have studied their technology for years. Maybe I can find weaknesses. Ryan smiled for the first time since the aliens had delivered their message. They called us violent and dangerous. They said we fight too much, but they forgot something important. What is that? Jake asked. Humans fight hardest when someone tells them they cannot do something. They just gave 7 billion stubborn humans a reason to prove them wrong. Over the next few weeks, the news spread across Earth and all the colonies. People were angry. They were sad. But they were also determined. Human history was full of times when people had been told they could not do something. Each time, humans had found a way to do it anyway. The barriers around the solar system were invisible, but they were real. Any ship that tried to leave would hit the barrier and bounce back. The aliens had used technology that humans did not understand to build a prison around their entire solar system. But humans had something the aliens did not expect. They had the refusal to give up. On Mars, Kate Miller was working to expand the terraforming project. She was changing the red planet's atmosphere so that humans could breathe without suits. The project was supposed to take 300 years. Kate decided it would take 50 years instead. On Europa, scientists were drilling deeper into the ice to find more water and minerals. On Titan, engineers were building bigger cities under the orange clouds. In the asteroid belt, miners were working day and night to find every useful rock and metal. Earth's governments put aside their differences. They knew that humanity's survival depended on working together. They started the biggest construction project in human history. They would build ships, stations, and machines that could support human life for centuries if needed. Jake called a meeting of Earth's top leaders. Military officers, scientists, engineers, and diplomats came from every continent and every colony. "They think they have trapped us," Jake said. "They think we will sit here quietly and accept their judgment. They do not understand humans very well." Lisa stood up. She was no longer just a diplomat. She was now the leader of humanity's response to the quarantine. "We have two choices. We can accept their decision and live as prisoners, or we can find another way." "What other way?" asked General Frank Davis. He was in charge of Earth's military forces. "I do not know yet," Lisa admitted. "But humans have never been good at accepting limits. We climbed mountains because they were there. We went to space because we could. We will find a way past these barriers because we refuse to be caged." The meeting lasted 3 days. When it was over, humanity had a plan. It was not a plan to surrender. It was not a plan to beg the aliens for mercy. It was a plan to become so strong and so advanced that no one could ever cage humanity again. The aliens thought they had ended humanity's dreams of exploring the galaxy. Instead, they had given humanity the biggest challenge in its history. And humans loved challenges. 2 years had passed since the aliens built their invisible walls around the solar system. Kate Miller was working in the deep tunnels of Mars Colony 7. She had not seen sunlight in 3 weeks. The red planet's terraforming machines were running at maximum power 24 hours a day. "The atmosphere is getting thicker," she told Ben Thompson during their morning meeting. Ben was in charge of the entire Mars colony. He had dark circles under his eyes from working too much. Everyone was working too much these days. "How much thicker?" Ben asked. 12% more oxygen than last year. The pressure is up too. In 5 more years, people might be able to breathe outside without full suits, just masks. Ben nodded. This was good news, but it came at a cost. The terraforming machines were using so much power that other systems had to be turned off. The colony was cold and dark except for the most important areas. Back on Earth, Sophie Walsh was preparing for another dangerous mission. She was a pilot who flew small, fast ships to the edge of the solar system. Her job was to study the alien barriers and look for weaknesses. Her ship was called the Arrow. It was painted black and had special sensors built by Dr. Chris Newton and his team. The sensors could detect energy patterns that normal equipment could not see. Sophie had made this trip 47 times. Each time she flew as close to the barrier as possible without touching it. Each time she recorded everything her sensors could detect. Each time she hoped to find something useful. "Arrow to control," she said into her radio as she approached the barrier. "Beginning sensor sweep." The barrier was invisible to the naked eye, but Sophie's instruments could detect it clearly. It was like a wall of pure energy that surrounded the entire solar system. It went up and down, left and right in every direction. There was no way around it, over it, or under it. But after 47 trips, Sophie had noticed something strange. "Control, I am seeing the same patterns again. The energy levels go up and down in a regular cycle, like breathing." Dr. Newton's voice came through the radio. "Can you record the exact timing?" "Already on it," Sophie replied. She had been recording the patterns for months. The barrier was not perfectly steady. It had rhythms and cycles that repeated every few hours. Sophie flew back to Earth and landed at the research station in the Pacific Ocean. Dr. Newton and his team were waiting for her data. "Look at this," Newton said, pointing to the computer screen. "The energy levels drop by 3% every 4 hours and 22 minutes. Then they rise again." "What does that mean?" Sophie asked. "I am not sure yet, but it means the barrier is not perfect. It has weaknesses. Meanwhile, General Frank Davis was visiting the shipyards on the moon. Thousands of workers were building the largest fleet of spaceships in human history. These were not warships designed to fight aliens. That would be useless. Alien technology was too advanced for humans to fight directly. Instead, these ships were designed for exploration and survival. They had thick armor to protect against radiation and debris. They had powerful engines that could run for years without maintenance. They had living areas that could support crews for long journeys. "How many ships will be ready by next year?" Davis asked the chief engineer. 50 large ships and 200 small ones, the engineer replied. "But General, where are they going to go? We cannot leave the solar system." Davis smiled grimly. "Maybe we cannot leave yet, but we will be ready when the time comes." On Earth, President Helen Garcia was meeting with leaders from every nation and every colony. The meeting was secret and held in an underground bunker in Colorado. "The isolation is working," she told the group. "Our people are becoming stronger and more united, but we need to think about the future." The president of Mars Colony spoke first. "Our terraforming project is ahead of schedule. In 10 years, Mars will be able to support 10 million people." The leader of the Europa stations added, "Our underwater cities are expanding. We have found huge reserves of water ice and rare minerals." But it was Admiral Lisa Brooks who had the most interesting news. "Our scientists think they have found a way past the barriers." Everyone in the room became very quiet. For 2 years, they had been trapped like prisoners. The idea of escape seemed impossible. "Dr. Newton believes the alien barriers work by bending space itself," Lisa explained. "They make it impossible for our ships to travel faster than light. But if we could bend space in a different way, we might be able to slip through." "How?" President Garcia asked. "We would need to build the largest machine in human history. It would use all the power from every nuclear reactor on Earth and Mars. The energy would be focused through special crystals that we have found in Mars's deep caves." General Davis leaned forward. "What are the chances of success?" "Unknown," Lisa admitted. "This has never been tried before. It might work. It might destroy everything we have built. It might do nothing at all." The room was quiet for a long time. Finally, President Garcia spoke. "For 2 years, we have been building up our defenses. We have made our colonies stronger. We have united our people. But we have been thinking like victims. It is time to start thinking like explorers again." She looked around the room at each leader. "I am authorizing this project. We will call it Project Genesis. We will build this machine. We will try to break free." Not everyone agreed with the decision. Some thought it was too dangerous. Others thought the resources could be better used to improve life in the colonies. But the vote was close. 8 in favor, 7 against. Work on Project Genesis began immediately. The machine would be built on Mars, where the special crystals had been found. It would take 2 years to complete and would require the cooperation of every human settlement in the solar system. Kate Miller was put in charge of mining the crystals. They were deep in Mars's crust, in caves that had been formed billions of years ago. The crystals were beautiful, clear as glass but with a strange inner light. They were also incredibly hard to extract without breaking. "These crystals are like nothing we have ever seen," Kate told her mining team. "Be very careful with them. Each one takes a week to mine safely. We need hundreds of them." Sophie Walsh continued her flights to the barrier. Now she was looking for the best place to try to break through. She had identified several locations where the energy patterns were weakest. Dr. Newton worked 18-hour days designing the machine. It would be the size of a small city and would consume more power than all of Earth's cities combined. The mathematical calculations filled thousands of pages. As the months passed, people across the solar system contributed to the project. Children in Earth schools collected metal for recycling. Farmers on Mars donated food to feed the construction workers. Miners in the asteroid belt worked extra shifts to provide rare materials. The aliens who had built the barriers had no idea what humans were planning. They thought the quarantine was working perfectly. They believed humans had accepted their fate and were settling into permanent isolation. They were about to learn that they had underestimated human determination. Dr. Chris Newton had not slept in 3 days. His eyes were red and his hair was messy. Empty coffee cups covered his desk. He was staring at numbers and equations that filled 6 computer screens. Then suddenly, everything made sense. "That's it," he shouted, jumping up from his chair. "That's how they do it." It was 3 in the morning, but Newton ran through the hallways of the Pacific Research Station. He burst into Admiral Lisa Brooks' office without knocking. Lisa was still awake, reading reports from the Mars construction teams. "We found the YAR." "Answer," Newton said, breathing hard from running. "I know how to break through the barrier." Within 2 hours, every important leader in the solar system was connected to a video conference. President Garcia was in Washington. General Davis was on the moon. Ben Thompson joined from Mars. Sophie Walsh called in from her ship near Jupiter. Newton stood in front of a giant screen covered with diagrams and mathematical formulas. His hands shook with excitement as he began to explain. "The aliens are not using normal technology to keep us trapped," he said. "They are bending space and time itself. Imagine space is like a sheet of rubber. They have stretched the rubber around our solar system so that no matter which direction we travel, we end up back where we started." Ryan Foster, who was watching from Earth's orbital command station, raised his hand. "If space is bent, how do we unbend it?" "We don't unbend it," Newton replied. "We tear a hole in it." Everyone in the conference became very quiet. The idea of tearing a hole in space sounded impossible and dangerous. Newton continued his explanation. "Sophie's sensor reading showed us that the barrier has weak spots. These weak spots happen because space-time can only be stretched so far. When it gets too thin, it starts to crack." He pointed to a diagram showing waves of energy. Every 4 hours and 22 minutes, the barrier becomes weaker for exactly 17 minutes. During that time, we can use massive amounts of energy to create a small tear in the fabric of space. Kate Miller's voice came from Mars. "What kind of massive amounts of energy?" "Every nuclear reactor on Earth and Mars running at maximum power, all focused through the crystal array we are building," Newton replied. "The crystals will concentrate the energy into a single point and direct it at the weakest part of the barrier." General Davis looked worried. "What happens when we tear this hole? Where does it lead?" "That is the unknown part," Newton admitted. "The tear should create a tunnel through something we are calling subspace. It exists outside normal reality. A ship traveling through this tunnel should be able to emerge anywhere in the galaxy." Sophie Walsh had been quiet during the explanation, but now she spoke up. "Doctor, I have been flying near that barrier for 2 years. I have seen what happens when even small objects touch it. They are destroyed instantly. What makes you think a ship can survive traveling through a tear in space?" Newton smiled for the first time in days. "Because we are not going to travel along the surface of space-time. We are going to travel through the layers underneath it, like diving under a frozen lake instead of trying to break through the ice." He pulled up another diagram. The ship would enter subspace through the tear, travel through dimensions that exist parallel to our own, then emerge back into normal space far from here. President Garcia asked the most important question. "How dangerous is this?" "Very dangerous," Newton replied honestly. "The energy required could destroy Mars if something goes wrong. The subspace tunnel might collapse while a ship is inside it. The ship might emerge inside a star or a black hole. We might tear a hole in space that cannot be closed." The conference room was quiet for a long time. Everyone was thinking about the risks. They had spent 2 years building up their colonies and making life better for millions of people. This project could destroy everything they had accomplished, but they were also thinking about the alternative. They could stay trapped in the solar system forever, never exploring the galaxy, never meeting new species, never growing beyond their current limits. Admiral Brooks spoke first. "Doctor, how long would it take to build this machine?" "The basic structure is already being built on Mars. With the crystal array and the power focusing systems, we need about 18 more months. And how many ships could go through at one time? Maybe 10 or 12 if they go through quickly before the tear closes." Ryan Foster had been thinking about the military aspects. "Who would go? This is basically a one-way trip. We have no idea what we will find on the other side." "Volunteers only," President Garcia said firmly. No one will be forced to take this risk. But even as she said it, everyone in the conference knew that volunteers would not be hard to find. Humans had always been willing to risk everything to explore new frontiers. Kate Miller's voice came from Mars again. We found something else in the deep caves. More crystals, but different ones. These crystals seem to store energy instead of focusing it. They might be useful for the ships that make the journey. Dr. Newton looked very interested. Can you send me samples? Already on the way, Kate replied. Over the following weeks, Newton and his team worked to understand the new crystals. They discovered that these crystals could store enormous amounts of energy and release it slowly over long periods of time. They would be perfect for powering ships during long journeys through unexplored space. Meanwhile, construction of the Genesis array continued on Mars. The machine was taking shape in the Chrysi Planitia, a flat area near the equator. It looked like a giant flower made of metal and crystal, with 12 arms reaching out from a central hub. Each arm was 2 kilometers long and covered with focusing crystals. The work was dangerous. The crystals had to be cut and shaped with incredible precision. Even tiny mistakes could cause the entire array to fail. Kate's mining teams worked carefully to extract perfect crystals from the deep caves. Ben Thompson coordinated the construction from Mars Colony 7. Thousands of workers lived in temporary shelters around the construction site. They worked in shifts around the clock, because there was no night or day schedule in the underground construction areas. Sophie Walsh made more flights to study the barrier. She had identified the exact location where the first attempt should be made. It was at the edge of the solar system, beyond Pluto, where the barrier was thinnest. The energy patterns are most unstable there, she reported. If we are going to punch a hole in space, that is our best chance. As the Genesis array neared completion, teams on Earth and the Moon began building the ships that would make the journey. These ships were different from anything humans had built before. They were designed to survive in the unknown conditions of subspace. The hull of each ship was made from the strongest materials humans could create. The life support systems were designed to run for years without maintenance. The engines could run on the energy-storing crystals found in Mars's caves. Most importantly, each ship was equipped with advanced sensors and communication equipment. If the ship survived the journey to another part of the galaxy, they needed to be able to send information back to Earth. Ryan Foster was chosen to command the first ship, which was named the Horizon. He spent months training with his crew, learning to operate systems that had never been tested in real conditions. We are going to be the first humans to leave the solar system in over 4 years, he told his crew during a training session. We have no idea what we will find out there, but whatever it is, we will face it together. The countdown to activation had begun. In 6 months, the Genesis array would fire for the first time. Humanity would either break free from their prison or destroy themselves trying. Either way, they would not remain caged. Ryan Foster stood on the bridge of the Horizon, looking out at the 11 other ships floating nearby. Each ship carried 200 people who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history. They were about to try something that had never been attempted before. The Genesis array on Mars was fully charged and ready to fire. The massive machine stretched across the red planet's surface like a giant metal flower. Every nuclear reactor in the solar system was feeding power into the crystal matrix. The energy readings were beyond anything humans had ever created. Fleet Command, this is Admiral Brooks, came the voice from Mars Control. All systems are showing green. The barrier weakness window opens in 10 minutes. Foster looked around. His bridge. Laura Bennett was his second in command. She had trained for 2 years to operate the new navigation systems. Tony Rodriguez was handling communications with the other ships. Janet Hayes was monitoring the sensors that would guide them through subspace. All ships report ready, Laura announced. Crews are at their stations. Foster activated the fleet communication system. This is Captain Foster to all ships. In a few minutes, we are going to attempt something impossible. We are going to tear a hole in reality itself and fly through it. Some of you might be scared. That is normal. I am scared too. He paused, looking out at the stars beyond Pluto where they were waiting. But remember why we are here. 4 years ago, aliens told us we were too dangerous for their galaxy. They locked us in a cage and threw away the key. Today we break out of that cage. Today we show the galaxy what humans can do when someone tells us something is impossible. Dr. Newton's voice came over the radio from Mars. Fleet Genesis, the energy buildup is beginning. You should see the effects in 30 seconds. Foster watched the main display screen. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then space itself began to change. The stars in front of them started to bend and twist. Colors that had no names began to appear in the darkness. Energy discharge in 10 seconds, Newton announced. The Genesis array fired. The amount of energy released was equal to the output of Earth's sun for an entire day, but focused into a beam narrower than a human hair. The beam struck the barrier at its weakest point and space-time screamed. Reality tore open. A swirling vortex of impossible colors appeared in front of the human fleet. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The opening was large enough for the ships to pass through, but it would not stay open for long. All ships follow my lead, Foster commanded. Stay close together and whatever happens, do not stop moving. The Horizon entered the tear first. The journey through subspace was like nothing any human had ever experienced. The ship was surrounded by colors that hurt to look at and shapes that made no sense. The normal laws of physics did not work here. Up and down had no meaning. Time moved differently. Several crew members became sick from the strange sensations. Janet Hayes tried to keep her instruments working, but the readings made no sense. The ship's computers could not process what they were detecting. "How long have we been in here?" Foster asked. Laura checked the chronometer, but it was spinning wildly. "I cannot tell, Captain. Time is not working normally." Behind them, the other 11 ships followed through the tear. Each ship was having the same problems with navigation and time measurement. But their hulls were holding together, and their life support systems were still working. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the journey ended. The Horizon burst out of subspace and back into normal reality. The stars looked different here. The constellations were completely unfamiliar. They had traveled farther from Earth than any human had ever been. "Navigation report," Foster ordered. Tony Rodriguez checked his instruments. "We are approximately 400 light-years from Earth, Captain. We are in a part of the galaxy that has never been explored by humans. Communications. Try to contact the other ships." "All ships are accounted for, sir," Janet replied. Everyone made it through. Foster felt a moment of pride. They had done it. They had broken out of the alien prison and traveled across the galaxy. But their celebration was cut short by Janet's next announcement. "Captain, I am detecting artificial signals nearby. There is a planet in this system and it has cities." The main screen showed a world that looked similar to Earth. It was blue and green with white clouds. But as they watched, explosions began appearing on the surface. The planet was under attack. "I am reading multiple ship signatures," Janet reported. "Some of them match the designs of the Galactic Council species that quarantined us, but others are completely unknown." Foster did not need to think about what to do. "All ships battle formation. Red alert." Laura looked surprised. "Captain, we do not know what is happening down there. Maybe we should stay out of it." "People are dying," Foster replied. "That is all I need to know." The human fleet moved toward the planet. As they got closer, they could see the battle more clearly. 3 different groups of ships were fighting in orbit. Some ships looked like the crystal and gas creatures from the Galactic Council. Others were dark and angular with no clear design pattern. The third group of ships was trying to protect the planet, but they were badly outnumbered. Their ships were smaller and less advanced than the others. "Captain," Janet called out, "I am receiving a transmission from the planet. They are asking for help. Put it through." A strange alien face appeared on the screen. It had 4 eyes and blue skin, but its expression was unmistakably desperate. "Unknown ships, please help us," the alien said in words that the ship's computer translated. "The Council forces claim to be protecting us, but they want to enslave our world. The Devourers want to destroy us completely. We are caught between them and cannot defend ourselves alone. Foster made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. All ships engage both enemy forces, protect the planet and its defenders. The human fleet dove into the battle. Their ships had been designed with lessons learned from centuries of human warfare. They were fast, maneuverable, and surprisingly tough. The Council forces were shocked to see unknown ships attacking them. The Devourers were even more surprised. Neither side had expected humans to appear in this part of the galaxy. The battle lasted 6 hours. The human ships fought with a coordination and ferocity that amazed their new allies. They used tactics that neither the Council nor the Devourers had seen before. When the fighting ended, both enemy fleets had been driven away. The planet was safe and the human fleet had gained something more valuable than victory. They had made their first alien friends outside the solar system. The blue-skinned alien who had asked for help was named Zara 9. She was the leader of her people, who called themselves Meridians. She invited the human fleet to land on her planet. "Why did you help us?" Zara 9 asked Foster during their first meeting. "You do not know us. You had nothing to gain from fighting our enemies." Foster thought about the question. Because it was the right thing to do. Humans have a saying, "The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing." Zara 9 smiled, which looked strange on her alien face but was somehow familiar. "The Galactic Council told you that humans were too violent and dangerous, but you did not use your violence to conquer or destroy. You used it to protect people you had never met." Over the following days, Foster learned more about the situation in this part of the galaxy. The Council controlled most of the known worlds, but their rule was not as peaceful as they claimed. Species that refused to join were attacked by the Mwai, Devourers, or conquered by the Council itself. "There are dozens of worlds like ours," Zara 9 explained. "We want to remain independent, but we are too weak to defend ourselves alone." Foster saw an opportunity. What if you were not alone? 6 months after the battle over the Meridian world, Captain Foster found himself in a meeting room on a space station orbiting Wolf 359. Around the table sat representatives from 12 different alien species. All of them had one thing in common. They had refused to join the Galactic Council and were fighting to stay free. The meeting was being held in secret because the Council would attack anyone who tried to organize resistance against them. Foster was no longer just a ship captain. He had become one of the leaders of what they called the Independent Species Alliance. "The Council fleet is moving toward the Sigma Draconis system," reported Commander Sandra Hayes. She was Foster's intelligence officer and had spent months learning about Council tactics. "They have 40 ships. The local defense force has 12. Zara 9 spoke from across the table. Her people had joined the Alliance immediately after the humans saved their world. "The warriors of Sigma Draconis are brave, but they cannot win against such numbers." An alien that looked like a walking tree spoke next. His name was Groot 7, and his people were master engineers. "My ships can carry equipment to help them, but it will take 3 days to reach their system." Foster studied the star map on the table. "We can be there in 18 hours if we use the subspace tunnels Dr. Newton taught us to create." The aliens around the table looked amazed. Humans were the only species that could travel through subspace safely. It gave the Alliance a huge advantage in moving ships quickly across long distances. "How many ships can you bring?" asked the representative from Tau Ceti. His people were scientists who had developed new shield technologies for the Alliance fleet. 20 human ships and 30 Alliance vessels from nearby systems, Foster replied. "It will not be enough to defeat the Council fleet in direct battle, but we do not need to defeat them. We just need to make the cost too high for them to continue the attack." This had become the Alliance strategy over the past months. They could not match the Council's numbers or technology, but they could make every Council victory so expensive that the Council would eventually give up trying to conquer independent worlds. Laura Bennett entered the meeting room carrying a data pad. She had been promoted to Admiral and was now in charge of coordinating Alliance fleet movements. "I have good news," she announced. 3 more systems have asked to join the Alliance. The Council's attacks are making more species realize they need to work together to stay free. Foster smiled. This was exactly what they had hoped would happen. Every time the Council attacked an independent world, they proved that their claims of peaceful governance were lies. "What about Earth?" asked Zara 9. "Have you been able to contact your home world?" Foster's expression became serious. Dr. Newton and his team have been working on establishing a permanent communication link through subspace. They think they can do it, but it will require building another Genesis array. The truth was that Foster worried about Earth every day. The human fleet that had escaped through the original subspace tear was only 12 ships with 2,400 people. There were still 7 billion humans trapped in the solar system by the Council's barriers. But there was good news from some of the Alliance scientists. Dr. Carter, who had joined Foster's expedition, had been working with alien researchers to understand Council technology better. "We think we know how to bring down the barriers around Earth," Dr. Carter reported during a private meeting with Foster. "The aliens use quantum field manipulation to bend space-time. If we can disrupt the quantum fields at multiple points simultaneously, the entire barrier system should collapse." "How many points?" Foster asked. "At least 50 locations around the solar system, all attacked at exactly the same time." Foster realized what this meant. We would need 50 ships with special weapons, and we would need to coordinate the attack perfectly. Yes, and we would need to do it without the Council detecting our preparations. It was an enormous challenge, but Foster had learned not to underestimate human determination. Over the following months, the Alliance began secret preparations for Operation Liberation. Human engineers worked with Alliance scientists to develop weapons that could disrupt quantum fields. The Meridians provided special crystals that could focus the disruption energy. The tree-like people from Groot 7's world built the weapon systems. The Tau Ceti scientists designed targeting computers that could coordinate attacks across vast distances. Meanwhile, the Alliance continued to grow. More species joined every month as word spread that it was possible to resist the Council successfully. The Alliance now controlled over 60 star systems and had a combined fleet of more than 300 ships. Foster often thought about the irony of the situation. The Council had quarantined humanity because they said humans were too violent and dangerous. But the violence the Council feared was exactly what the galaxy needed to fight tyranny and oppression. Kate Miller had arrived from Earth 6 months earlier through a second subspace tunnel. She brought news that the home colonies were thriving, despite the continued quarantine. "Mars now has 5 million people," she reported. "Europa has 2 million. The asteroid belt colonies have grown by 400%. Earth's governments have created a unified command structure for the first time in human history." But the most important news was about the Genesis array. Dr. Newton's team has built 3 more arrays. They can open subspace tunnels large enough for entire fleets to pass through. This changed everything. If Earth could send large numbers of ships to join the Alliance, they would have enough force to challenge the Council directly instead of just defending independent worlds. The plan for Operation Liberation was finalized during a meeting on a hidden base in the Vega system. 50 Alliance ships would attack the quantum field generators maintaining the barriers around Earth. At the same moment, Earth's new Genesis arrays would open multiple subspace tunnels to allow the trapped human fleet to escape. "The timing has to be perfect," Admiral Brooks explained. She had arrived through a subspace tunnel to help coordinate the operation. "If we attack the barriers too early, the Council will detect our ships. If we attack too late, Earth's fleets will not be able to escape before the Council reinforcements arrive." Foster looked around the room at the faces of humans and aliens working together to plan the most ambitious military operation in galactic history. 2 years earlier, he had been a young captain following orders to stay within the solar system. Now he was helping to plan the liberation of his entire species. "How long do we have once the barriers fall?" he asked. "Maybe 2 hours before the Council fleet arrives in force," replied Sandra Hayes. "Earth's fleets will need to be ready to move the instant the barriers collapse." The operation began at exactly 800 hours, Galactic Standard Time. 50 Alliance, Ships appeared simultaneously at points around the solar system. Each ship fired its quantum field disruptor at the same instant. The barriers that had imprisoned humanity for 4 years flickered and died. At that same moment, Earth's genesis. Arrays opened 12 subspace tunnels. Hundreds of human ships that had been built and waiting during the long quarantine poured through the tunnels and emerged across the galaxy. Foster watched from the bridge of the horizon as Earth's fleet spread out to reinforce Alliance positions throughout known space. In a single day, the balance of power in the galaxy had changed completely. "Captain," Janet Hayes called from her sensor station, "I am receiving a transmission from Admiral Brooks on Earth." Admiral Brooks appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Foster could see the blue and white curve of Earth against the black of space. "Captain Foster," she said with a smile, "Earth is free. The quarantine is ended, and humanity is ready to take its place in the galaxy. But not as members of the Council that had rejected them. Humans had found something better. They had found allies who shared their values of freedom and independence. The Council made a mistake when they caged us," Foster said to Zara 9 during the celebration that followed. "They thought they were protecting the galaxy from human violence. Instead, they created an enemy that was stronger than anything they had faced before." "What will happen now?" Zara 9 asked. Foster looked out at the stars where human and alien ships flew together in formations that would have been impossible just a few years earlier. "Now we build a different kind of galaxy," he said. "One where species can choose their own paths. One where diversity is celebrated instead of feared. One where freedom matters more than forced peace." The Galactic Council had exiled Earth because they believed humans were too dangerous for their perfect order. They had been right about humans being dangerous, but they had been wrong about what that danger would be used for. Humans were dangerous to tyrants, dangerous to oppressors, dangerous to anyone who thought freedom was something to be feared instead of protected. And that was exactly the kind of dangerous the galaxy had needed.